And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. It has been a while since I have done an interview. I've been doing a lot of solo stuff, and I have a great one for you today. Before we get started, if you can please do me a favor, if you can like, share, review, subscribe, help me to grow this show, because without your help, I cannot do that. If you would like to support the show and help it upgrade, please head over to patreon.com. Sign up for as little as $4 a month. You can help the show grow. You can help me get better equipment, better cameras, things like that. We're getting ready to move into the new studio, which will be awesome once it is done. Today, our guest is Mark England. He's a co-founder and head coach of Enlifted. I love coaches. I was a coach. Let's get right into it here. Mark, what is happening? Thanks for hanging out with us.
What's cooking, Wes? Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, Dennis Moralda introduced me. I had him on the podcast, and he said that you were a guy to talk to. And I listened to your episode with him today, and then just started, kind of figuring out a few things I wanted to talk about. But can you tell people kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I got introduced on stage. We gave a TEDx talk. It was cool. Back in 2017, and they introduced me as a language geek.
Language geek.
And I thought about that, and I was like, you know what? I do get geeky with it. I do put a lot of hours on the clock staring at how words influence us for better and for worse. And I do talk a lot about it, and I teach about it. I've been doing this one thing, folks, as in researching, presenting, and teaching on the power of words and stories, somewhere between overtime and full time and overtime the whole time for the past 16 years. So if somebody does something that much, doesn't matter what it is, it's geeky.
Well, you get good at it too. Like, I mean, what drove you to want to be someone who looked at words that way and things like that? What was the defining moment that made you do that? Because words are powerful, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit here.
For sure. Oh boy, did I not see this coming. So I thought I was a tough guy in high school and college. I wrestled in college, got into Jujitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in college, and Thai boxing was right around the corner. And this was the late 90s. This is when it wasn't even known as MMA yet. It was known as Vale Tudo or NHB, or John McCain would call it Schumann cockfighting. And it was weird. It was, people looked at you weird. They're like, why would you do that? And so I had a handful of fights. I won a couple of state kickboxing titles. I was like, I'm going to Thailand. And that was the plan. I was going to go over there for a year, polish up my Thai boxing skills, come back and go pro. And that's exactly what didn't happen. 6 months over there. I moved over to Thailand in 2002. And that was a big move for me, very big move for me. I'd only had my passport for 2 years, and moved over there. And 6 months in, I had my second knee surgery. Whoops. And the doctor, I remember like yesterday, he said, Mark, your career as a fighter is over. You could become a very good swimmer. And so I'm picturing doing laps next to grandma at the pool. Not what I had in mind at 26, 27. And so darkness descended, and I used that. I had 3 going away parties. It was the biggest thing I'd ever gone for in my life. And I failed miserably. I used that fail, what I saw it as at the time, as the final piece of damning evidence in a case that I was secretly making against myself, that I was not good enough, and that there was something wrong with me, and I was somehow doomed to fail. Don't know how, I just am. And here's the final piece of damning evidence. Case closed. You're a loser. And I entrenched and lit on fire a victim mentality. We'll talk about that today. Very important. talking about mindset and success and what gets in the way
Yeah.
and yeah, all that stuff. And I didn't laugh for a year. And after I ended up living over there for 10 years. I lived in Thailand for 10 years, which still sounds weird to say. Um, and it's the first part of it was like, I'm just not going back. I'm not going back and not be able to be that person that I was. I'd rather be a nobody over here
Was
than
there people at home that were like, "Hey, you got to face the music," or like, I mean, were you afraid to come home and just kind of show your face, or what? Why wouldn't you want to come home?
that was some of it because my entire, I mean, even from high school, in college and after college, my entire persona was an ass beater. And most of my friends, outside of most of my friends were in where I lived in Richmond. It all revolved around the fight scene, and they kept going, and I couldn't talk about being left behind. I was like, I'm gonna go. They were getting their black belts. They were opening schools. The thing was going. New fighters were coming up, and it would have been too much for me at the time, or at least in my mind it was, for me to go back and just not be able to be involved. It's like it was like all your best friends go out with your girl and stay out.
It's interesting because I'm just thinking about, because like I was an athlete in high school. I played team sports, right? And like I was a really good football player. Got a scholarship to play football. Not a big one, but I did have one. I didn't take it, but I didn't want to be like you're talking about. I didn't want to be. I live an hour away from where I went to high school. I don't want to go back there. I don't want to revisit that. I don't want to be around that situation because it just wasn't good for me. Like it didn't make me feel good about myself. But when I played sports, though, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I played a team sport, but I wasn't good at the one that I liked. Like I was good at football and I didn't really like it, but I was okay at baseball, not good enough to get a scholarship. But I realized that I like baseball more because it's an individual sport, even though it's a team sport. And so when you're talking about the sports that you're doing, it's like this is an individual thing. Like there's only one person to rely on. But it sounds like these people that influenced you kind of were team players too, because they're your friends and they were on your side.
It's a mix of both, because guess what? You're not going to get good at jujitsu by yourself in your garage.
Right.
Okay, you're not going to get. You have to have people to go against. So there is a very, and then you've got your corner men. It's a major team team sport part of it. Um, and then it's just you in the ring.
Right.
It's just you in the ring. And for whatever reason, I've always been attracted to those kinds of things. So I'm a professional speaker, and I mean, go look up Mark England TEDx talk. I give a TEDx talk on the power of words and stories. 1,800 people, live streamed to 155,000 people, recorded, put it on the internet forever, no pressure. I love that shit.
And it's not like an easy feat to get that done either, right? Like how many people do these TED Talks? That's just amazing.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's something very attractive about that to me, and I also like. I mean, we've got a great team at Enlifted, and I love them to pieces because I'm a one trick pony. I'm good at one thing, and it's the vertical of the words and telling the stories about the words, and there's a lot more to a business than the product. Okay,
Right.
there's a lot more to a business than the content. Um, yeah, so yeah, I stayed over there, and my vice principal. I mean, Ray Charles could have seen I was struggling, and and he goes, hey man, I just got back from Koh Samui. So I was in Bangkok for 5 years, and Koh Samui is an island in the Gulf of Thailand. Because there's this place called the Spa, and they're doing some very interesting stuff down there. Cleanses. Go down there and you use the yoga classes in a steam room, and they got all the organic food, and then you got these cleanse programs. And I was like, Why not? So I go down there and I pay them to not eat. It's a great business model. I pay them to not eat. I get a coconut, I get a couple of herbal detox pills, and my time. Um, and I came back feeling better. And it was a very interesting happening scene. There's people from all over the place. And everybody was just wearing shorts and t-shirts, and nobody knew who, like, you couldn't, it didn't matter what you did. Everybody was in the conversation. So I kept going back. My third time down there, I went to, and I laughed at the title when I first heard it. Uh, this guy, who Barry Musgrave, who became my mentor in this work, he was giving a workshop on emotional detoxification, and I go, emotional detoxification. Right, because
We don't
I'm a
have
tough
emotions.
guy. I allow myself to have an emotion once every quarter, and and it has to be in private.
Yep.
Um, and I go, and he talks about words, and he talks about stories, and he talks about identities and breath. And then he asked, is there any woman, or he didn't say woman, is there anybody that is stuck on a story? And this woman shot her hand up real quick, and she told the story, and it was a stinger of a breakup. Here's how it went. Short version: her and her best friends got a house down at the beach. This is in college. Her boyfriend and his best friends got the house next door. Add alcohol, press play, and he hooked right. He hooked up with her best friend in front of everybody one night, and then dumped her in front of everybody the next night. Can we say ouchie on three?
Yeah.
And this was 4 years later, and this story, she thought about it so much, so frequently, at such a high level of intensity, she hadn't been able to get back into another relationship. It essentially hijacked her mental real estate.
Yeah. It took the power.
Dude, it consumed her.
Yeah.
And that's very frequent when it comes to, because really everybody, is it the thing that gets us? Is it the story that gets us? Or is it the repetition of the story that gets us?
Yep.
Those are two different things.
Well, when you talk about it, you think about that like it's like if you practice at something, you get good at it, right? Well, if you're practicing
Hmm.
a shitty story in your head over and over again, what's going to happen? You're going to get really good at defining what that was.
Oh yeah, people. It's the last thing you want to get a black belt in, but people can get black belts in the victim mentality,
Yep.
and and a lot of times it happens unbeknownst to them, because this will make more sense later. We've got a glitch in our language, everybody. We've got a glitch in our language. What does that mean? That most people's education about their language comes down to spelling, grammar, and definitions. There's a whole other side to the thing. There's a whole other part of that conversation. And very few people, and I've asked a lot, had any classes or courses in, let's just say, high school, about how to use their language to stay focused on what's important to them and keep the drama down and build themselves up in their imagination, and create feelings of confidence and competence, and yes, unlock their breath. Uh, uh, that's very rare, very rare. And the reality is most people's language is working against them, unbeknownst to them. And that's what we do. We teach people about how to get their language working for them.
Yeah, and the language is a big part of it, but I think that one of the things too is like knowing that it's possible, like visualizing the outcome, right? And part of doing that is having this language that positively impacts the way that you think about the situation.
Correct. Correct. And this woman was struggling from this exact same thing. He had her tell the story of the bad breakup 3 times. First time, he didn't touch anything, just let her go through. Angry, crying, pissed. Second time through, he adjusted some of the words and the thing loosened up. Now she's sad, no tears. And everybody's like, huh. Third time through, he stopped her at the Lord of the Rings sentence, at the linchpin sentence, the sentence that held the whole thing together. Okay. And that's normal. That's normal that there's one or two sentences in a story that force the rest of the story. And this one sentence was this: he did that to me. And he had her repeat it 3 times because he knew what he was doing. He did that to me. One more time. So she's staring at the sentence, and everybody else is staring at that same sentence, also known as a spell. Y'all know what the definition of a spell is? Webster's, not mine.
Yeah.
It's a word or a combination of words of great influence. That's it. And it goes both ways.
Yep.
So nothing ever works out for me is a combination of words that greatly influences someone, assuming that they believe it. Okay. I'm good at showing up, or I've got a lot of support. I've got a lot of support is also a combination of words that greatly influences people, just in a different way. One constricts, one expands. One disempowers, one empowers. Okay?
One gives value and one takes it away.
For sure. Both of which influence our reticular activating system, also known as the lens that we see the world through. And so he had her that third time say it again. He did that to me. And she said it in just this matter of fact, of course, it's true. And then he had her take out that last sentence, that last word, me, and put in himself. And it was such a radical departure from how she had been telling that story. It was clunky. The delivery was clunky, and it went up at the end. It's called up talk. He did that to himself? And then you see it catch. You see the breath unlock. He did do that to himself. And then she started talking about the friends that he lost and all the others, like, and the drama that ensued after that. And it was actually worse for him.
Yeah. Just unlocking the other side of that story.
For sure. With one word. And then she walked herself right out of the rest of the story. And she goes, that guy was actually really weird. It wasn't going to work out anyway.
Right. Isn't it weird how this, and it's kind of weird because this is the way that our society kind of is right now. It's like there are everyone has that victim mentality, right? And so we can't have a conversation where there is 2 sides of that story, but she's only seeing the one side, right? She's not seeing the other side. And that's where we are in this country right now. It's like we're in a
pickle.
Yeah, because we see it one way, we see it the other way. We're not open to anyone's other version of it, and we don't see both sides of it.
Yeah, and that's take it or leave it. This is my personal opinion. The only way forward is in. Otherwise, it's war. Because it's a whole lot easier. This is what I do professionally all day long. It's a whole lot easier for most people to externalize blame and responsibility for their current state of affairs than to pick up a pen and write out their stories and start changing their language and turning their attention in on themselves. Oh boy, is that uncomfortable. It is at the same time, it pushes all the buttons. Part of us hates it. The lower level parts of us hate it. The higher level parts of us rejoice. And you're absolutely right. You see these picket lines, and this side says that, and that side says that. What happens when they meet? They actually, I read a book, and it was the term for it when two clashing ideologies meet and argue and upregulate, they dig into the ideology. It gets stronger in them, regardless of what happens, regardless of what the other
Right.
person says. It's a tribal mechanism thing. And so I'm watching things play out. Um, and regardless of who's more right or who's wrong, and I have opinions on that thing, of course. Everybody's breath is trapped in their chest. Everybody's breathing is trapped in their chest. Um, so we'll pick back up at that story and what happened for me there, and then we'll move into some examples if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I saw that, and it was you ever see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I have, but I do not recall it. I know I've
Dude,
seen it.
it's
Is that
such
the one?
it's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've seen it.
Leonardo DiCaprio, and Brad Pitt, the
Uh-huh.
Marilyn Manson, the story
Yeah.
in the '60s. You ever seen the meme where Leonardo DiCaprio has got the beer and he's pointing? He's like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a decent meme. Anyway, that's
Pointing
what
right at you.
happened for me. Pointing right at the TV, and people put all kinds of stuff in there. Like when someone has a strong recognition of something important,
Right.
that's what I did. When she goes from he did that to me, which forced her. Look at this, everybody. Mechanically speaking, forced her to create the victim villain mental imagery. Look at the words. He did that to me, because 2 = 2, or 2 + 2 = 4. She's gonna get he's the picture. He's gonna be in the picture. She's also gonna be in the picture. He's doing something to her. She has to wait for him to stop in her imagination for her to feel better, because that's where the majority of the conflict is going on. Like I said, that happened that over that beach week period of time, and then she's been rehearsing this story in the way that she has, based on how her words were put together every day for 4.5 years.
Right.
Right. And as long as she keeps the words the same, she's getting the same mental imagery. She's getting the same feelings and emotions. Her breath is going to stay trapped in her chest, and her body's going to be all tight.
Yep.
And so she took herself out of it. He did that to himself. That took her out of the picture, literally. And then she was able to see things from a different perspective. If you want to see things from a different perspective, everybody, you have to change the words. You have to, because if you have the same words, then used in the same way, you're getting the same perspective. So there's this thing, everybody. It's called mindset, and it's a great thing to talk about. A lot of people talk about it. Let's keep talking about it. And the way it's talked about most often is in this big picture, philosophical way, where it's this thing that we know we need to get better at. And there's that confident person over there, looking person over there. I'm over here. Whoops, would have been nice. And let's work on our mindset. So, you know what that is? That's impractical. Look at the word impractical, impossible to practice. The bigger, more complicated and abstract the thing is, the harder it is to implement. Us at Enlifted, I'll give us a little bit of credit for the things we've done well. Excuse me. We've demystified the conversation about mindset, and we've gamified it. Guess what? So you go talk to somebody about mindset, and ask them that talks a lot. What is it? Ask them. Well, it's mindset. And that's you're going to get that, or some big, complicated, hard to put
Right.
into action thing. You know what mindset is? We've got a definition. We've got a simple definition. Here it is. Your mindset is the story that you tell yourself.
Yeah.
It's the story that you tell yourself. And you know what that story is made up of? Words. It's made up of words. And here's the best of news and the worst of news. We're participating in that story. We're participating in that story.
Yep.
It's like, sweet, I'm creating my reality. I'm creating my own story. Fuck. I'm creating my own story, right? So because again, part of us wants to be completely absolved of any
Right.
wrongdoing in anything. It's the nature of the victim mentality. I'm going to close my garage door here because the guys for the lawn just showed up. So that's, if y'all are hearing that, that's what that is. So I see that and I go, dude, that's not my story, but that's my story,
Yep.
because I had a he did that to me story. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. We were just warming up.
Right.
And that right there in 2003, I went and bought all the DVDs for this one modality, got all the literature on it, and I started practicing, and went out and did a 5-day training with the founder in 2006. And then, so I was an elementary school PE teacher for 5 years in Bangkok.
Yep.
Very cool. And then January 17th, 2007, I went back down to that same spa, put my poster up next to all of the other practitioners. And that was the day I went pro, and I've been on the clock since.
It's amazing, like you said, like how that language works. I mean, I think a lot of times through all the coaching and everything, like the athletic coaching, right? And it just translates for me into life in general, because I don't play sports anymore, but they're always something that gets to me. And you sit there and you think, and I think back to when I was in high school and I was like, well, he's not playing me. Instead of flipping that story around where, did I do the work, or was I the person that he needed to be there? Like, and I think that a lot of kids get that tone in their head and they don't understand that it's for the greater good. It's not just about you, it's about the whole team. And it's not really him doing that to you. It's you doing that to yourself by not putting in the work and doing, maybe you're not good enough. But like, if you can figure that out, and if you can realize that it's a you problem and not a them problem, it usually flips it pretty dang easy.
It's easy mechanically. For something like that, it's easy mechanically speaking, because you just take out, there's only a handful of projection keywords: he, she, they, self, if you're playing that game. Right.
Yeah.
People's first names, mom, dad. You take those words out and put in I, and it's going to be a pluck in the nose.
Yep.
Like I said, part of you is not going to like it, and then part of you is going to. It feels good to be to give ourselves agency in a situation. It feels existentially horrible to be chronically disempowered, and that's part of the problem. Is that if you look at whatever side, let's say there's two warring ideologies, and if you break down the language patterns and take out the specifics, the language patterns are almost exactly the same. So I look at these things and I'm like, of course, I understand why people are so inflamed, and I personally think that this is a concerted effort. It's a well-funded, well-organized weaponization of the victim mentality in order to drive wedges in between groups of people in the United States and light the fucking thing on fire.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I think. And that's one of the reasons that I put so many hours on the clock, is because there must be an alternative to this. There is an alternative. There is a way to um, uh, mitigate the retardation of people's mindset. And people, oh my God, he's saying retard. Yeah, and you know what? I know what the definition is.
Yeah.
Show me somebody who's pissed off when someone says retard or retardation. I guarantee you they don't know what the definition. The definition of retard is to impede the development of.
Right.
And when I use certain words in certain ways, and I inflame my imagination, and I put myself in an upregulated stressed state, also known as sympathetic nervous system response state, and trap my breath in my chest, and go into amygdala hijack. Look that up. That's when we are listening tanks and we get fixated on a thing, and really degrade my ability to participate in my life, then I have retarded my mindset.
Yeah.
And a large part of the answer to this it's not it's it's not tactical gear, everybody. Um, it's learning about the definition of the victim mentality.
Right.
Most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality. For your listeners, I invite you to pick up a pen and a piece of paper and put yourself in a very exclusive club of not only a group of people that have heard the definition of the victim mentality, but wrote it down. So there's these numbers: 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, and 80% of what we teach and share.
Yep.
So if it's okay, I'll do this twice. I'll recite the definition of the victim mentality twice. First time slow, second time faster with some context, and give everybody a chance to put pen to paper. Because if you walk out of here with just that, the victim mentality written down, this was worth your time.
Yeah.
Is that green
That'd be
light?
great. Yep. I love it.
Cool. First time. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. Second time, a little faster with some context. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. A person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, everybody write that down, depends, as in it has to have a habitual thought process and attributions. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction. And what's a thought process? Very simply put, it's similar words that we use over time. And then characteristics. Or attributes? What's an attribute? It's a characteristic. What's the main characteristic that we focus on here at Enlifted? It's the breath. Get your breath trapped in your chest, and you're going to be edgy as shit. Get your breath trapped in your chest, and your knee-jerk reaction is to take stuff personal. Get your breath trapped in the chest, and you're going to be a horrible listener. How good do you think? What do you think Antifa's listening skills are like out on the streets, out in dem streets?
All you got to do is think about that, like in your mind, like how do you feel when you're angry? How do you feel when you're reacting? What do you do? The first thing you do is hold your breath and grit your teeth and just get angry, right? And that's what happens. You can't really, you're number one, you're taking the oxygen away from your body that can supply your brain that just does what you just said. It stops you, it retards you, it slows you down, and you cannot think clearly without it. And it's so crazy just to think about that.
Oh yeah, it's so easy to get groups of people to do whatever you want them to do when they're in an upregulated stress state. It really is. That's the precursor to I say jump, you say how high, and it's because look at how much they would lose, and you can pick any side of the street that feels existentially wrong and existentially wronged and completely absolved of any responsibility in the life that they're living.
Right.
Okay. So I'm hell yeah, I pick on Antifa. I think they're dorks. And and there's plenty to pick on both sides of the street.
Right.
Right. So let's just say, you're look at what they would lose. They would lose everything. They're oppressing me. Look at the words. They're oppressing me. It's called a projection, everybody.
You're
They
allowing them to oppress you.
Well, it gets. I mean, that's. You see, you're a much nicer person than I am. Take out the they and put in I. When someone goes from they are oppressing me to I am oppressing me,
Yeah.
holy shit! The world just went from
It
flat
is.
to round,
Right.
and now. Okay, well, how are you oppressing yourself? Most people are oppressing themselves in some
100%.
ways. Like it's let's take this out of them. Let's take this, make it more, well, just downgrade it. She's wasting my time. If I say she's wasting my time, I've still got the victim villain mental imagery.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Take out she, put in I. I'm
Walk.
wasting my time.
It's funny. It's take that out, switch it, and walk away because guess what? No one's wasting anyone's time anymore, right? Because I've decided that I'm not going to
Exactly.
allow her to waste my time.
Exactly, because now I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm wasting my time. I've got all this stuff to do. She's not going to change.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. And and so you're absolutely right. It becomes way more actionable.
Mhm.
I put myself into no, it's nobody likes an action zero. People like action heroes. And a lot of people's language tricked them into being in a variety of different ways. The victim mentality has 31 flavors of suck, and there's so many different, it's finite, yes, and there's a number of different language variations for people to trick themselves into inactivity and disempowerment. And I can go on a great 10-minute breakdown at the end of what the three main pillars of the language patterns of the victim mentality are. We're already on one of them. It's called projections, and that's where that's the last place you want to start, because that's where usually people have the tightest white knuckle grip on. And I'll give one more example. He's disrespecting me. Same thing. They're oppressing me. She's wasting my time. He's disrespecting me. My mom talks to me like a child. Take out mom and put in I. I talk to me like a child. Shit. Whoa. Or let's just go with there. He's disrespecting me. Take out he, put in I. You're going to have a different lens to see the thing through.
Right.
And guess what, folks? Here's the Hardy Har line. No one has no, there's no close second when it comes to who's talked the most shit and trash to you about you.
Right.
But I'll just me. There's nobody on planet Earth that's talked more garbage, trash, venomous, mean shit to me than me. But one person says one thing out there, and now I've got, like, I'm ready to go nukes. Like, no.
You
The
spend
the
the most
real
time with yourself. I mean, it only makes sense.
for right for right and the real action, and it's going to sting a little bit. You know what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Uh, um, and fine. And that's not even the real scary shit. I'll take a little bit of sting right now. I'll take a little bit of annoyance right now by getting my words on paper. Thinking about our thinking. Alan Watts said it. When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way. Get your words written down on paper and start changing the words, and watch what happens to your perspective. If you change the words, you change your perspective. Period. End of story. And it's where the real action's at. Okay. And yeah, fine. It stings sometimes. It's annoying sometimes. And that's nothing in comparison to the existential terror of dealing with this stuff for, 3, 4, 5 decades. If you look down that line and see the amount of wasted time and talent, that's the real spooky shit. So we've got projections, 1. Then we've got negations, 2. There's three of these things.
Yep.
And then the last one is where we start, because it's the easiest. Super easy. Negations, they sound like this. I won't make that mistake again. There's a picture of me making that mistake again. I can't keep living like this. There's a picture of me. I can't keep. There's a picture of me living like that again. Don't talk back to me. There's a picture of whoever I just said that talking back to me. I'm not gonna get in an argument with them again, and there's a picture of me getting in an argument again with them, which pisses me off. And so the next time I'm around them, I'm still a little pissed off because I've said that a couple of times, and then it's just because my breath is in my chest, it's easy for me to say the thing, well, whether it's accidentally or not, that's going to incite that fight again. It's called negations, and here are the keywords, and they force us to stare at the worst case scenarios. Can't, won't, isn't, not, hasn't, haven't, shouldn't. Real quick story about this. 2014, I'm up in Calgary doing a training for a sales team. I stay after and do one-on-one sessions. And this 23-year-old guy was struggling, and he's this is exactly what he said. He said, "I can't keep focusing on my past." Said it super strong like that. And I handed him a pen because I'm a rocket scientist, and I said, write that down. And he goes, write what down? Because I'm paying way closer attention to his words than he was.
Yeah.
He's consumed in the story. I'm
Right.
observing the story, which if y'all work with people, that's a key takeaway. And I told him what sentence, and he wrote it down. And I said, okay, if that's what you can't keep doing, what can you start doing? And just like that first person, he gave me a half sentence, and it was a little bit of a stutter, and it had up talk at the end. Focus on my future more? Because he wasn't used to using those words, right? And I said, yes, say it again. And it was like, take out the like. It took him a while. I can focus on my future more. I can focus on my future more. My driving teacher told me when I got in the car, I'm 46 now. He said, this is 30 years ago. He said, look where you want to go because you're probably going to go there. I'm still talking about that shit. And so now that we had him pointed in a better direction, I'm like, okay, what do you need to do? And he identified 3 things to do, which, because he's looking where he wants to go now. Read these 2 books that he knows he needs to, enroll in the mentorship program, and go out for drinks with the boys every once a month. Socialize. He messaged me 9 months later and said, I'm making money. I moved out. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Abracadabra.
Right.
Huh? Abracadabra? Yeah. So when I say abracadabra, most people think magic. There's usually one person that goes to Steve Miller Band. But, yeah, gonna reach out and grab you.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
And so when I learned about this, it was a major piece of the puzzle for me. And I talk about it a lot on podcast, just a lot. We're famous for talking about this in the Enlifted community. So abracadabra does not mean magic. Abracadabra is Aramaic, which is an ancient language, and it translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence. And the teachers of the day would triangulate it and wear it around their neck to remind them of the power and the mechanism of the spoken word.
Oh man,
because they knew, yeah, that's a William Author piece.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and then I got an AK-47 piece because that's the platform that I run. The pen and the sword, right? That's been eternally valuable, being able to do both. Anyway, yeah, and so abracadabra translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence. What an interesting, and they knew that if their words were working against them, which most people's words are, this is the whole thing's an education issue, then whatever they wanted to do was going to be harder than it needed to be. And they also knew if they got their language working for them, especially in groups, they could do. It's really is what do we want to do, and which is way cooler than what I don't deserve to do anything. I'm not good enough. That's another important definition. I'm not good enough. You know what? It's called a telephobia, the fear of not being good enough. There's a word for it. There's a word for it. A telephobia. Look that shit up. And so we've got projection. We got the definition of the victim mentality. We've got projections. We've got negations. And now we've got soft talk. Wes, I'm going to say some sentences and you tell me what word stands out the most. I'm also going to inflect a little bit. I think I might be procrastinating.
I think I might.
You think you might? Here's a good one.
If you think you are.
Exactly. Maybe I'm drinking too much coffee.
Yeah, you've probably had a few too many.
Probably had a few too many.
Right.
I probably should spend more time with her.
Yep.
Probably.
Just do it.
And you probably should. Exactly. I guess I need to get back in the gym.
You're fat.
And you're not going to because you've got the guess in there.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, I really should call them back.
Make the call.
Exactly. But you're not because you're shooting on yourself.
Yeah, right.
It's a very, very great thing to like. You've got a very high probability of not doing the thing that the word should is in the sentence connected to when you use the word should, because it creates pressure and obligation. So we're talking about soft talk, folks, and that language, those words are in your language and they force people to create excess indecision and anxiety, which is existentially, my favorite quote about it from Malmody is, I prefer the fear of making the wrong decision to the terror of indecision. And another important piece on identity, whatever we do for over a prolonged period of time, we get better and better and better at it. And then it's all, we do it. It's self-inflicted. And at some point in time, we get so good at it that we identify ourselves as such, and then we start to get really good at it. Here's a case in point. So somebody uses a lot of soft talk, okay, and they create a lot of indecision over a prolonged period of time. Eventually, they identify themselves as an indecisive person. Oh, yep. I'm just very indecisive. You're about to, once that spell gets cast, word or a combination of words of great influence, once that spell gets cast, you're now about to go to the next league of indecisive people. And it goes both ways. I'm really good at showing up. Show up. And eventually you'll be like, damn, I show up a lot. I'm good at this. And then you're about to get even better at showing up. So it's one of the conundrums of,
you're basically like labeling yourself that you can or cannot do something by doing that. Like saying, nope, I'm OCD. I'm a procrastinator. Those types of things. Like you're labeling yourself, whatever that situation is. And then it's kind of like visualization, right? Like you visualize with the end in mind and you see the result. Well, what's going to happen? You see the result as a negative outcome. You're not going to make that happen because you can't do it because there's all these reasons why you can't. You're not going to.
Correct. Even in the absence of clear evidence. That's the last part of the first sentence of the victim mentality. As in, once we really get this thing cooking, we will doctor evidence. We will plant evidence. Right. We will fabricate evidence out of
this is why I can't do that.
Correct. It's called confirmation bias.
Yep.
And there's no opportunity out here. We're all so oppressed, and you keep playing with that. You know where you end up? You end up wrecked. You end up wrecked and destroyed, and in some form or fashion, nature finds a way to take out. It just weakens you. It weakens you. Nature finds a way to take care of, to get rid of inviable species or inviable subsets of species, because
Well, I
we're
mean,
not designed
you,
to hang out in stress states for prolonged periods of
right.
time.
Well, and you think about it, like people who think that their circumstances define who they are. Like that's the toughest thing that I see. I mean, you can come from a poor background, you can come from a oppressed background, you can come from all these different things, and you can be the victim, and you can allow that to keep you down where you're at, or you can figure out a way to claw your ass out. And that's it. All starts with changing the way that you look at the situation, because if you can't look at it from the other angle, you're never going to find it.
Yep. And take it with a grain of salt, because it's the business that we're in. The 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 most reliable way to change the way you look at something is to get the words on paper that describe the way you look at something. So take the thing that you're looking at and write the story of it
Yep.
on paper. Once the words are on paper, it is a profound difference between someone's ability to change their mind. If someone changes their mind, what are they saying? They changed their story, and if they changed their story, then they changed words. Okay, the fastest, easiest way to change our mind and change our story is to get the story externalized, written on paper. As long as the story is kept up in the head, it swirls. It's seemingly infinite. Where does it start? Where does it stop? It's tough action. So first things first, pick up the pen, even if it weighs 900 pounds, and write the damn story out conversationally. Okay, half sentences don't cut it. Okay, and get specific. The more specific you get. Hey, look at the words. The devil's in the details.
Yep.
You get the details of a specific situation which is very different than writing generally. Writing generally about how bad your childhood was. That's you're not going to get much there.
Right.
If unless you know what you're doing. Okay. And so my advice is to get specific events. So the specific fight that you had with your person, the specific moment that you knew the business was done, the specific moment of that you know broke your leg playing, so whatever. And most people, you start cleaning house with the bad stuff, with the ouchy memories, and then progress your way, and you'll know when by how you're feeling, to the wins. Because most people have never titled and written out the wins, the specific times they got it right, knocked it out of the park, the people were there for them, the nice things people have said for them. And when you title and write those stories out conversationally, erring on the side of more detail than less, they become way more meaningful.
Yeah.
Way more meaningful.
Well, I mean, it's a physical copy now. It's like something that you visually can see, and you have a piece of that in front of you instead of it just being in there.
You've got the evidence.
Yeah, it's right there. It's right in front of you. Man, this has been a great conversation. I will have to do something like this again, because I think that there's a lot of self-talk that people need to work through and try and figure out, and so many questions. Unfortunately, my time is, you know how my time is, but it would be awesome to just, maybe we'll set something up again, because I think that it's a great thing. And I've been doing a lot of interviews, and I've started to do a lot of podcasts by myself, trying to kind of show people how I think and my thought process. Because a lot of times it's just listening to what the person is saying, and I'm trying to interject my opinion a little bit more, and just like a topic, just talking about that. And I think that we can relate this in some certain way to life, like, in sports or in baseball, like how a young athlete is working through their products and how they're trying to realize that they are actually responsible for those terms or things like that. So, yeah, I'd love to have you back if you're interested, for sure.
Very interested. Send me the link after we're done. I'll book in again, because I booked in for 7 podcasts yesterday in an hour, because I had them lined up. But
Yeah.
this is like I said, this is something that I do. I go on podcasts.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and where
Got it.
people can find you too, so that they know where to find you.
Got it. We certify coaches in how to dismantle their client's victim mentality, including their own. We teach people about the power of their words. And we've graduated. We've been doing that for the full time for the past 4 years. We've graduated our 350th coach. And those are small batch. We only do 10 people per certification. All the trainings are delivered live. I deliver all the trainings, every single one of them. And we do it that way, which is rare in the coaching industry. We do it that way because this is more than coaching for us. This is an art. This is a craft, and we appreciate it and approach it as such. Go to enlifted.me. And that's everything that you'd ever want to know about the certifications. You could book in for a discovery call there as well. We have a podcast. It's called Get Enlifted. It's all about the words, and then IG at Enlifted Coaches.
Yeah, and that's awesome that's happening. I think that this could be very valuable to anyone who is trying to do anything. Like I think about it, I'm a my job is sales, and I think about, not closing a deal. And I look at it this way: they didn't like me, and I turn it around on myself. What did I not give them that they needed? How can I change who I am versus how can I change who they are? And it's just it's one of those things that's super powerful, and you can use it in anything in life.
You ever heard of Jeffrey Gitomer?
I haven't.
Look him up. He's an OG juggernaut in the sales game. He wrote the best selling sales book ever. Sales. It's either the Sales Bible or the Little Red Book of Selling. He's a personal friend and mentor to my business partner and I. And his wife, Jen Gitomer, is one of our level 2 coaches, and she's the sales coach for the Enlifted community. If you'd like to have her on, I can make that happen.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yep, definitely. Like
Great people.
Yep, and I'm working on another podcast as well. That's going to be a little bit different than this one. She might be good for both of them. So,
dude, I've got a list of tremendous people I can recommend for you as far as guests are concerned. But that's an off podcast conversation.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out, and we're going to do this again. So. I'll send you that link over and we'll get her handled.
Perfect. Thank you.
Alrighty. Yep. Thanks a lot. All right, everyone, go check that episode. Will be out in about 2 weeks. This episode will be out when you listen to it. So appreciate Mark taking time to hang out with us. We're going to have him back. We're going to talk more about the power of your words and empowering yourself and trying to make that a better situation for yourself, because it really is changing that victim mentality. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.